back to another episode of the Accommodation Shows. This week, I'm joined by one of my new friends, the wonderful Samantha Cox.
Yay!
Welcome to the show. How are you going?
I'm really well, thank you, Bart. How are you?
Really well, thank you. Thanks a lot for joining me. We've been on a tour of with Destination New South Wales, Aussie government, touring regional New South Wales, talking all things employer of choice. This is where we've met and had a lot of fun so far. We're halfway through our tour, and I talked to you. I said, "Hey, Sam, I've got this cool podcast. Do you want to come onto it and join me and have a bit of a chat?" How have you been finding the tour?
Yeah, it's been great. I think it's really interesting to be in regional New South Wales and get to meet people within those areas and have those conversations about what they're needing within the hospitality and tourism industry, where they're struggling. And it's been great to hopefully leave some points and some ideas and some tips on things that they can potentially do differently or re-engage and do things that could really help drive their business in a successful way. So yeah, it's been great fun.
Yeah, look, I've found it super rewarding, like it's such a privilege to be able to go out and talk to people and kind of share insights, but also to learn from others along the way and hear their journeys and their stories and kind of work collaboratively. And I think the other part that I really like is so meeting all these great people, but also working with, I feel like we're a bit of a team now, sort of in terms of the speakers and even Destination New South Wales who are organizing this in terms of the work that they're doing.
Absolutely, and I think that's the beauty of it, because not only do we get to build this kind of small intimate family within the speaking team, and get to really know each other and understand what each other does within their own businesses and lives, and then we get to meet these other great people within the hospitality and tourism industry, who are doing great things and are really trying to drive the tourism and hospitality industry and becoming employers of choice.
Yeah. So look, I reached out to you about the accommodation show, not just because you're a speaker on the tour. I think that's secondary to me wanting to talk to you. It was more your presentation and what you're actually talking about. And I know that my audience is always hungry to meet leaders, to meet people that have done cool things. And I think you fall under those two boxes. One, you're 100% a leader. And two, you've done some incredibly cool things that I think everyone could benefit from learning about, and hearing your journey, hearing your story. And then we'll share some insights into guest experience and hospitality and that sort of thing. But before we kind of get into it, can you let everybody know kind of a bit more about your background?
Absolutely. So, as you can tell, I'm not Australian. I was born in the UK and decided quite early on in my early start of my career that people were a passion of mine, experiences were a passion of mine, travel was a passion of mine. And so I found myself traveling all over the world from a very young age of about 18. My first job I ever had, I worked on a campsite in France, which I loved. And slowly moved all over the world, lived in Greece, worked in Greece for a year or so, then found myself here in Australia. And a lot of the time in my early career, I was very much in admin, EA, PA roles. And in my mid 20s, I had the opportunity to work for Virgin Blue, which is an airline here in Australia, which is now Virgin Australia. And while I was working for them, I had the opportunity to meet Sir Richard Branson, who owns the Virgin Group. And my role as an EA with Virgin Blue actually then gave me the opportunity to become Sir Richard Branson's EA. So at the age of 28, I moved to Necker Island, which is his private island in the British Virgin Islands, and was with him for about 4.5, almost 5 years, which was an incredible journey in my 20s, considering that I was living on Richard's private island in the Caribbean, traveling everywhere with him. Necker is a beautiful island, beautiful resort. People can also stay there. And I think it was a big stepping stone, and where it then took me into my 30s, into my hospitality and guest experience career. But yes, working for Richard and having the opportunity to be and experience that really high end, unique experiences while traveling really gave me that passion for then what I did in my 30s.
I love that story. I love that journey. I can imagine like the backpacker, right? Like back when you were 18 and when you were doing that, that was just what everyone in the UK used to do, right? So I was
Hmm.
living in London as well. Everyone would go, and it sounds like you're the backpacker that never stopped. And now I'm thinking of like titles for this episode. I'm like, oh, from backpacker to Sir Richard Branson's EA. Like it's such a great story. And so, working for Sir Richard Branson would have been a really unique experience. It would have been something that a lot of people wouldn't get or will never get the opportunity to actually experience. Can you tell me in a bit more detail about what that kind of uniqueness would be like? What were those kind of opportunities?
Like you said, not many people will have had the opportunity that I had with Richard. And, from the very point of living on a private island, that's very unique. There's not many people who will ever live on a
Mm.
private island. Um, I got to travel a lot on private jets. Again, something that not many people will ever get to do. I got to stay at some of the best hotels in the world and receive the best service. And obviously, all of that has kind of put layers onto my life and who I am and what I was doing with my career. But I think even just being with Richard on a day-to-day basis and seeing him interact with people and seeing him being the leader of his Virgin group and the company, just being by his side and seeing how he really would treat people and talk to people, and how he would get feedback from people within his teams, and not just the senior management team or the executive team, but everybody from his tennis coach on Necker, for example, to always myself and Helen, who's Richard's current EA and was when we joined. But I think just being around him and learning some of the lessons of business and and entrepreneurship, is that right? Um, um,
Yeah,
and
so good.
really making an impact on me personally, about how business works and how unique that was to be able to have that almost teacher and leader at my beck and call. He was my boss, but also was teaching me as I was going along, of the 4.5 years I was with him.
Yeah, and tell me where the sort of that convergence between the leadership, entrepreneurship, and hospitality, tourism, travel. Obviously, he's one of the big names in that whole space, and that's something that you were obviously interested in, right? You're working for Virgin Blue, um, but getting that hat and putting it on, and sort of really understanding, I guess, like things like what puts together an exceptional airline, what puts together exceptional businesses, because he's a serial entrepreneur. He doesn't just do one business. He had so many different things, but what I love to focus on is the tourism sort of side of it, potentially accommodation as well, and that sort of thing. What were your learnings there?
I think so. Virgin Limited Edition, which is Richard's quite bespoke properties around the world. He's got places in South Africa, Necker, um, just that uniqueness of how he delivers that element of accommodation and that service. And then going on from there, he launched Virgin Hotels when I was with him. He's got a beautiful hotel in Chicago. I know he's got a lot more now all over the world. And obviously now he's gone into Virgin Voyages. But I think what he does, he gets an idea, like he did with Virgin Atlantic, which was his first airline. um, he's not reinventing the wheel. He's just taking it to that next level of, okay, where is that attention to detail? Where is that values and that feeling that you're part of a family when you're experiencing these experiences? And I think he's done that exceptionally well. And a lot of my learning and what a lot of I took in after leaving Richard and moving to America, um, was that attention to detail and how you make people feel in that experience. um, and just really focusing on those little things that may only be small details but leave a really big impact. And I think that's what Richard's done really well with Virgin Hotels, Virgin Limited Edition, Virgin Voyages. He's done, and all the airlines. He's done a brilliant job in taking something that's already kind of in the market but just making it more fun and making it, really focusing on those smaller details to ensure that that impact is long and lasting.
Yeah, and you really struck me with something that you said, which was around the how you make someone feel, the emotional response to a brand or to a stay or to an experience. And that's what drives us, right? Even if we think about marketing and advertising, if I think of an iPhone ad, it's always like, how do I feel at the end of it? I feel good, if, I feel them empowered. And my association, so I think having lived in the UK and really experiencing Virgin from that point of view, and the brand was super strong. It made you feel like it's something that you wanted to be part of. Um, that emotional side in hospitality and making people feel a certain way. Uh, do you have the answer for the secret to success?
Well, if I do, I can't tell you. No, listen, I talk about the it factor. You either have it or you don't have it. And I think if you have it, a lot of people who have the it factor are already in this industry because it comes very natural. It's almost like our superpower. I know that, I'm terrible at lots of things, but I'm also very, very good at a few things. And one of my very good superpowers is that I know how to make people feel comfortable, safe, happy, um, energized, and I think that that's something that's very natural to me. I don't have to work on that. I don't wake up in the morning and have to study. That's in me. That's who I am. And I think a lot of people who work within this industry have that natural it factor. Um, I wish I could, make a potion that people could take because I would be a billionaire. But I think it's something that it's a passion, it's a drive. And, I love being around people. I love seeing people have fun. I love people being surprised or have an element of, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And I think that that's a big part of what we do in hospitality. We look after people, we deliver these really unique experiences that people can be really blown away by.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. So we're getting way deeper than I thought already, which is great, because that whole sort of notion of passion around hospitality and passion around the industry, right? That's ultimately what you're saying. You've got the it, but I think that in a way the passion can also make up for it, right? So you might not have, like, might not be the best musician or the best violin player, but you can get passionate about it and become incredibly good at it because you're just passionate about it, right? So therefore, if you can get really passionate about hospo and about what it is that you do and understand that you've got sort of the business side, which I imagine that Richard and through your travels, a lot of people that you've met have got the kind of business side, but that hospitality side, it has to be in you, right? Like you can't just pick this up and go, all right, I'm going to make some money. You have to kind of believe in it and have a bit of ethos and maybe want to travel and want to have these experiences yourself.
Yes, 100%. And I think, after I left Richard, I came back to Australia for 12 months, but then I was headhunted for the role that I did in America for 6 years. And that was with Hard Rock Hotels and Casinos, Seminole Hard Rock, based in Florida. And a lot of my team that I employed, it it wasn't about what their resume said and what their experiences were. I knew instantly within probably about 10 seconds of meeting that person whether they were going to be a good fit for my team, just on their energy levels, the way they spoke. A lot of the things I could teach them once they were on board, but it was a case of I needed to know whether they were passionate about what they want to do, whether they liked people. Over my years in the industry, I've met people who I've realized actually don't like people. And I'm like, this may not be the right industry for you because you actually really need to like people. But I think that you can teach a lot, but having that passion and having that drive and having that wanting to be in the industry is so important. And then lots of the other things you can learn along the way.
Yeah. Um, I had a boss of mine many years ago. I remember sitting down with her and she was explaining to me about when she's hiring salespeople that you've got sort of two boxes. You've got skill and will. And she says, look, the willingness I can't teach you, the skills I can teach you, but that willingness has to come from you and from the people that we work with. And I think it's very similar, right? Is that passion, that drive, that want, it has to be there. But I think that the other thing that's really important is to understand what hospitality actually means, because I think that kind of gets left on the table quite a lot, and people don't really understand what good hospitality is. They might get into it thinking it's one thing, not really understanding the sort of the multiple layers of what real hospitality means.
Hmm. We would have a lot of people who would interview with us who would think that they were coming to join the VIP guest services team. So, they would be out at the airport picking people up off the private jets, taking them champagne, introducing them to their suite, which was, yes, absolutely part of their role. But the back end of it was, doing room checks. And that meant, looking underneath beds, making sure things were clean, making sure everything was ready and in place, making sure the toilet was flushing. It was being on your feet for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And so it really was about, okay, how does all the pieces come together to ensure that the guest is having a great experience? And that's like how those layers of hospitality are working. Um, I think of my own home, and whenever anybody comes over, there's always a bottle of champagne in the fridge. The house is always clean, tidy. I'm the world's worst. I'm always, my partner says, "Why are you doing all of this?" I'm like, because I want people to come into my home and go, "Oh wow, this is a great experience," even though they know me, they're my family and friends. It's a case of making sure that everything is not perfect, but yes, I'm a perfectionist, but perfect to the point where I want people to come in and feel that warmth of my hospitality.
So I'm going to go back to your experiences at the Hard Rock, but I just want to delve a little bit deeper into this hospitality thing because I'm really enjoying it. And I just want to get your because obviously you had the passion for travel and that sort of thing, and now we're talking about hospitality, which kind of leads straight into guest experience, which is obviously one of your huge fortes. What were your founding principles of hospitality I would say before you were 18? Sort of was it when you were a kid? Was there something that sort of were you always hospitable? Were you watching your parents? Did you have
Um,
people that were hospitable to you, or was it when you started traveling at 18 that then people showed you hospitality and you were like, oh my god, this is incredible. People are just so nice. How did you gain that passion and where did you learn about hospitality yourself?
I think probably growing up, my mum and dad used to love throwing dinner parties. And I remember being a young child, maybe 5 or 6, and whenever they would have dinner parties, especially in the English summers, it would be light until 10:30 at night. And I remember I'd always used to creep downstairs and have a look to see what was happening. And, mum and dad would have all these great friends over, and there'd be lots of laughter, and there'd be lots of great food and the smell, and, wine and all those types of things. So I think initially that's where I realized that, I liked that feeling that I felt when all the mums and dad's family and friends were coming over, and the smell of the food and the leftovers next day that we could eat. And I think initially that's where it kind of started. And then, my first job, I worked in a pub at 13 washing dishes. And again, it was a case of I liked being in that environment where, even though I was a pot wash at 13, was by the time I turned maybe 14 and a half, I was then a waitress. And I loved that interaction with people, and having those conversations and making sure that, I was delivering a service as a waitress the best I could. And then seeing people within, the pub, and just how that all kind of fell into place. And I think that's how I initially started to fall into the hospitality world. Um, and then traveling, I lived in France for 12 months when I was 18, and understanding their culture and their way of life and how hospitable they were. I love the fact that I used to have siestas in the afternoon, and then would have a long lunch. And it was just the way that, it wasn't a 10-minute stand up, eat a sandwich. It was, let's sit down and have a lunch that lasts an hour and a half, and then let's have a nap. And then let's go back to work and finish our day later in the day. And I think that all of those experiences has made me go, okay, well, that's just another layer. And learning from living all over the world, from France, I then moved to Greece, and that's a whole different way of life as well when it comes to hospitality. But I think very much a case of my parents probably installed it in me to start off with. Mum was always a great entertainer. She would always be throwing great parties. And then it's just grown from there. And then my travels and everything, it just add layer and layer onto the top of it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I kind of leading you a bit there because I thought you would have some stories because I think that's the same thing for me. As I was growing up, you could get to. I just remember being looked after in different circumstances by people that were strangers to me, and I found it incredible. Like, why would you go to all this effort, and why would you spend all this money on me? And I haven't really done anything for you. You just don't, know me at all. So and I've had those experiences, and they've been really touching. And I think it's a really great way of being and living. Actually, is just doing stuff for people and not really
Hmm.
expecting anything in return. But I'm going to keep moving because we will start to run out of time, and then I'll be disappointed that I didn't get to ask all the range of questions that I have. And let's go. So we're with Richard. We're working for him, and then obviously being an EA is not necessarily your predefined career, right? Like it's just part of your journey. And then you got into working for Hard Rock. So tell me about that part of your career.
And it's funny because a lot of people ask me that question. You went from an executive assistant to the Hard Rock being the director of guest experience. How do they go hand in hand? But that EA role is very much looking after people. You're looking, and I think so. It's just evolved from looking after from one person, which was Richard at the time, or my previous bosses before Richard, to then taking all those skills and going, okay, how can I then take that next level, doing all the things I love, which is looking after people, but taking it onto a bigger scale. And so when I was approached to go and work for Hard Rock, it was a case of, okay, do I want to move all the way back to the other side of the world again? Which I did. And at the time, Seminole Hard Rock Hollywood in Fort Lauderdale was a very successful locals destination, but they wanted to turn it into an international destination. So I was kind of almost given a piece of blank paper and said, okay, well, do what you think will make us an international destination from a VIP guest experience perspective. Um, and so we were given lots of toys to play with. The Seminole Tribe of Florida own a couple of private jets and helicopters. So that was logistically a tool that was great to be able to grow that type of business they wanted. And then I got to build a team of really great team members. A lot of them were there for the whole 6 years I was there. But from that guest experience point, so it was a case of I'd have a butler team that was with all my suites. I had VIP hosts that would look after our VIP guests within the casino and the hotel. They'd go up to the airport. I'd have an aviation team that would make sure that planes and all sorts of logistics were in place. Um, and we built it slowly over, like I said, 6 years, but probably took the first 12 months to really kind of get it established because obviously the property was there itself. But what did that VIP guest experience look like? And I think to this day, I haven't been there for 5 years now, but I believe that it's still going well and strong. The VIP department's still there. So, but yeah, it was a great opportunity to take a lot of things that I'd learned from Richard and experiences that I'd received, and then translate that into how do I deliver that now for a guest.
Yeah, fit on the other side of it. Yeah, I mean that makes complete sense to make that move. And so when you started there, was it a brand new endeavor for them to sort of create this division?
Yeah, absolutely. So they didn't have a VIP guest services department as such. Like I said, it was very much a locals casino and hotel that was doing extremely well. But they felt that they would want to, almost challenge the Vegas market and, the Asian market, and they've done that, and they've done it very, very well. And I think Larry Mullen, who brought me over, he'd seen what I'd done with Richard as such, and my passion, and he thought it would be a great opportunity to give me the opportunity to see whether I could do something there. And like I said, it worked really well. I had a brilliant team over there that I absolutely say that my success were due to them. But it was great to be able to bring everything I'd learned working for Richard, and not only my EA skills, but then my traveling background and everything I'd done up to that point. I joined Hard Rock when I was 33 years of age, so I had quite a 13 years worth of experiences to kind of help me decide how I was going to build this program, what it looked like.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I really want to delve into that. So without getting into sort of the nitty gritty, right? Like of greeting people and the yeses and the thing and that sort of team spirit type stuff. What I want to think about is the product actually, and kind of go from there because you're building the product to deliver the best experience. And obviously, people are part of that product that you're going to offer. And then you've got, you said you've got different toys and different things that you can work with. But obviously, also for you, I imagine, because you said you were 33 years old, so the level of
Hmm.
responsibility would have been like, like super high in terms of those.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, what am I doing? How am I going to tackle this? When you were thinking about that sort of, did you get into the world of thinking about those guests, those VIPs, and who they're going to be, and what those expectations are, and then start to create that product so that then you can get your team and surround yourself for it? Or how did you tackle that problem?
So I worked very closely. We had a player development team that um, were responsible for bringing the players in as such. It was then my role as the director of VIP guest services to then deliver that experience. And I think because I'd been in such a unique position with Richard, the reason why Larry brought me in was because he'd realised I'd had all these really unique experiences, and we wanted to make ourselves a little bit different from Vegas. You know, a lot of our big players would come in, but they would go to Vegas, they would be in Asia, and so what was that point of difference? How do we ensure that we were really doing something different, and that polish and those types of things? And so it was daunting. Like you said, I was 33 years of age. I had a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, massively, especially when we
Old
started bringing
enough, but
guests.
still quite young, right?
Mhm. Yep. Um, and, especially when we started to bring in guests from Asia and having to understand culturally what their expectations were and their customs were. And so learning all of those types of things, which we did along the way. And I was very fortunate. I was within probably the first 12 months of being with Hard Rock, I was flown to Asia, to Macau, and got to spend a couple of weeks out in that market of the gaming world and that hospitality. So, they were very good at um, ensuring that I was set up for success, and gave me the tools to be able to think outside the box and to do things differently and to have different experiences. So I could then reenact them some way with what I was developing for Hard Rock.
So okay, so then you figure out your team is something else that I wanted to talk to you about. So of
Mhm.
course you said that you had a fantastic team. It's something that we've been talking about on this tour, right? Is how does team fit into the whole piece? And you said that you had a great team, that you got together. Now it'll be a little bit controversial, a little bit difficult with you, because I'll say that all good and well when you're a casino and you've got loads of money, right? Like you get a bit of a prime pick of whoever you want to hire, especially if you've got really good budgets. But that doesn't mean that you can't still build the castle in the right way to then attract the right people, even if your budgets aren't the same. What kind of tips can you give from your experiences of hiring a crack team to people that might not be in the same position?
Oh, and I know I'm very privileged. I've worked for global brands, so who've had budgets to be able to afford the people that they're looking to attract. Um, but I think smaller businesses, it's about understanding what your business values are and trying to find people with similar values. I think that's for me personally, that's a really important piece of the puzzle, because I think once you align those values, you're normally on the same page, and normally therefore you can then find people who will go, okay, well, this is interesting because you align with me. It feels good for me, and I want to come and work for you. And I think that's one thing that for me now as my own small business owner, that's really important. I want to align with people that I feel that I connect with and I can work well with. And I think that's one, when it comes to employing team members, it's a case of, do they align with you? Are they interested in your story and your business story? And do you think that they will, continue to grow your business and grow your values, in a way that will make the brand and your business more successful?
Yeah, and I want to jump back one step as well, to a bit more the guest experience as well. And now I am kind of rushing because the clock is ticking, so that's why I'm jumping around a little bit. But I'm just trying to get the most pertinent questions out that I can. Uh, Delivering a guest experience which is different. That's something
Mhm.
that you were talking about before. Now, right now within hospo as a whole and accommodation, there are a lot of pressures coming on. We can't continue to do things the way that we did before and expect the same results, because the results are going to be people are going to be pushed, right, for money. The economies will get a bit weird. So we have to keep on innovating and doing things a bit different than everybody else.
Yep.
When we're tackling this kind of a problem, and when you were tackling the thing of saying, hey, we want to be different, obviously there's a certain element of risk, brand identity, and that sort of thing. How would you tackle doing things differently, or how did you tackle it?
I think with the Hard Rock, it was interesting because they've got some really core values, and like you said, I didn't want to change their values, but it was silly things. One of the things, and it's very simple, and I think regardless of where we are in the world, that recognition of who your guests are, it's not rocket science, but if you can build, I used to make it a rule that whenever we had our guests return, each team member would have to come back at the end of their stay with two new facts about this person, whether it be that they don't no longer drink Pepsi and now they drink Coca-Cola, or they no longer eat pepperoni pizza, they vegetarian pizza. But we used to build up all of our guest profiles, and I would have guests say to me, we've been going to Vegas for 10 years and they don't know half of about me like you do. How is that? And it's a case of, well, my team listens. They will be in a car with you from the airport to the hotel, and you're telling them about it's your daughter's birthday today. They make notes of that. They put it on your profile. So next year we can say, oh, wishing your daughter a happy birthday. Um, we had one gentleman that was telling one of my team members that he was a big, big Man United fan, and we managed to get a Man United shirt signed by David Beckham and put it into his room for his next stay. And it was those types of things, which, yes, they're extreme, and they don't always have to be extreme, but it was making sure that we were truly listening to our guests and making sure that we were capturing that information and using it in a way that really made that person feel special. And I think you can do that in all businesses. It's just about listening and thinking outside the box and going, okay, well, they told me that something happened today, or they told me that they're now vegetarian, or whatever it may be. But listening to your guests, that can be really the point of difference.
Yeah. And do you think now with the advent of technology, do you think that that's a lot easier than it might have been for you? Do you think that there's other smarts that we can use to sort of accelerate that journey?
Yeah, listen, I think technology will be always great, to have some of the systems that we have now to be able to record all this information that we're collecting. That's all fabulous. I'm still a massive people person. Technology for me will never take over what I can do when it comes to that personal connection. But I think it's there and it should be used, and it should be used in a way that makes people's lives easier from an employee perspective, but more enriched as a guest experience perspective.
Yeah. Um, I think for me it's one of those, it's a scaling thing, right? So if you're dealing with, or if you've only got a few or a limited number of guests,
Mhm.
maybe easier. But then as you get to more guests and it gets more complicated, you need some of those tools to sort of assist you along the way. But
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree with you more that we as an industry we talk about personalization all the time, but every time I get something which is personalized on my email or a text message or whatever, it just feels so impersonal.
Oh, and that's the thing. I agree with you as well. I delete most of my stuff, but if I know the guest, if I know who they are because I've spent time with them, it's a case of I'm going to make sure I use that information in a way that it doesn't feel that it's impersonal. It actually feels like they're part of the family.
So look, I'm gonna kind of start summarizing and wrapping up, and I'd love if there's any kind of like final tips or thoughts that you've got, then please share. But I guess our journey's been from talking about hospitality as a whole and how important it is to drive our businesses, like real hospitality. We are in hospo, but we're actually delivering real hospitality and being passionate about it, to achieve those goals. And then to really deliver exceptional hospitality, understanding our guests, like really understanding our guests and listening to them, is that bridge that gets you to start to deliver exceptional hospitality. How did I go?
Great. I think that the thing is, I believe, is that getting to know your guests, that's hospitality.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't just see them
I
as
couldn't.
somebody that drives your revenue.
Yeah, yeah. Couldn't agree with you more. Look, I like that final thought. Actually, that's really amazing. Look, Sam, it's an absolute honor and a privilege to have you on the Accommodation Show. I appreciate you sharing your insights with my audience, with me. I'll be honest with you, a lot of these shows we do because I'm just so interested. I'm interested to hear your story. So thank you for all of those. Now, folks, were there any final thoughts that you had, Sam?
No, I just want to say thank you, Bart. Like, it's been great getting to know you on our road show. I'm looking forward to our next adventure coming up this weekend or early next week. But yes, I feel that it's important for me to tell my story and to pass on some of my, experiences, and hopefully people may listen and go, oh, that's a great idea, and hopefully that will help them within their own businesses.
Fantastic. And what's the best way for people to follow you, follow your journey, get in touch, reach out if they want some of your help as well?
Yep. So you can jump online and head to Samantha Cox International. You'll find my business page there with a contact page. I'm also on LinkedIn, and then I also have a Instagram page. Again, Samantha Cox International. Ping me a message on there, and I'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. Look, everything will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to grab all those details there. Folks, if you are watching on the YouTube, make sure you give us a like and subscribe. I know I say it all the time, but it does make an absolute difference. 90% of you are not subscribed that are watching this. So now is your opportunity, if you've got this far, to do it. Leave us a review on the platform. So open up your phone, swipe to the podcast, leave us a 5 stars, and let us know your thoughts on this episode. Samantha Cox, you're wonderful. I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Bart.
Thanks.